I'm Emily Robinson-Hardy here with Baseball and Softball UK, and I am interviewing Katy Gould, the female health lead and soft tissue therapist. Hello, Katy.
Hello.
So, what is your role for the Medical and Science Commissions?
So as you've said there, so my role is a new role. It's a female health lead. So my job is to dive into female physiology to see what gains we can make in that side for our athletes in softball.
And why do we need a specific female health programme?
So we often hear the term that women are not small men. A lot of the data that we see in the sports publications, the sort of top 3 sports science publications, a lot of the data from 2016 to 2020, when we look at that data, the data is based, and 6% is only 6% is based on female athletes. So we're falling well short of what we could be looking into in terms of female physiology. So that's not to say that the 94% is all male. Some of that is mixed, but again, that information doesn't give us what we're looking for. So we are really needing to look into what we can do to improve or make those marginal gains, which is what it comes down to in a sport like softball, what we can do to improve muscle physiology, injury prevention, and make those improvements in our athletes. And so that will be my role in GB softball, to help make those improvements in females.
And what does your work with the programme include?
So the first thing I will be doing is to write a course specifically on female health that I can then roll out to my fellow medics and to the coaches, so that they will know how that we can actually target and make those improvements across areas like the menstrual cycle, hormones, pelvic health, breast health, so that we can make improvements in how we train our athletes, how we fuel our athletes, that kind of thing, so that we're not just making generalised improvements using that information that has come from science that, as I mentioned at the beginning, has come from data which has been tested on male athletes, because we are different to men because of how our hormones will fluctuate across, for example, our menstrual cycle.
And what has been the biggest challenge that you've faced to date?
I think when we, as I said, we look at that data, there isn't data at the moment. That's the hardest thing. And actually, when we look at when people want to look into actually doing studies on females, it's difficult. Not a lot of people want to do studies on females for the reason that, just for example, taking the menstrual cycle, if you want to do studies, it makes it complicated, because you would have to look at the female throughout the entire menstrual cycle. That means the study will take longer. It makes the study more complicated. It means the study will cost more. And that's why typically men will be studied more than women. So it's why women typically don't get studied, but it means that we need to do better, because we do need to know exactly how that female physiology works. And it means that we need to look into that, because you will have probably heard, you know, there's more chance that 6 times greater chance, for example, that a female athlete will injure their ACL, their ligaments, than men. That will come because there's a greater laxity of the ligaments, again due to hormonal changes, but also because of the way in which after puberty the hips widen, the angle of the shoulders change, and so we need to look into that. So following puberty there are a lot of differences, and we need to look into that so that we can prevent women leaving sport because of the changes that they feel, and that we can keep our athletes safer. And so that's a challenge, trying to look into doing more studies and keeping our athletes safe, and keeping them in sport and making sure that the data we're providing is specific for them.
So those are the challenges. So how about the wins? What have been some of the biggest wins?
I think the biggest win, I think, is getting the backing from Great Britain Softball to actually have this this gift of being a female health lead. And there are more of us around at the moment, and there are some great people out there who are doing some great work, and actually FIFA have just backed some great studies looking into studies with female health, and you've got the Well HQ out there, you've got Dr. Stacey Sims out there, and you know, taking this step forward means that we will hopefully be making some gains across our Olympic cycle, and that's what we want to do. We want to make that progression towards LA 28.
And what are your studies really going to mean for women?
It means that as I said, we're going to make those gains that have often been overlooked. I mean, even across the, even if we don't take into account sport, even if you look at something like the medical industry, all of those studies that look into the efficacy of drugs, those studies will have been done on men. So the medications that we take will often have been tested on men, and so the medications that we take, they don't take into account our physiology, and so sometimes we'll find that those millions of dollars that have been spent and the time it takes to bring a drug into market, we'll find that actually those medications that have to be stopped afterwards is because it affects the female physiology differently. And it's because those drugs have been treated on men, and so we find we need to take account of the female physiology because, say for example, a drug like Ambien in America, a huge study, the drug's usually having to be given in halves because it works on the female physiology differently. So it's a dosage thing because the way the female body works is completely different to the way the male body works. And so we need to take into account, we need to do more studies. So it's a really, really important thing. And so those are the changes that we need to make. And even the way that we fuel our bodies is different. So, and when we're traveling with our team, already that can be a challenge. When we're, even if we've had, for example, a couple of games, finding protein can be a challenge. Now for a man, they've got 3 to 4 hours to refuel. For women, we need to find that protein within 30 to 45 minutes for them to get those gains to refuel. So everything is completely different, and by having that knowledge means that we can look after our athletes much, much better.
And what are some of the challenges that female athletes face?
So some of them I've already mentioned. So before we even mention, you know, the menstrual cycle, which you've got pelvic health, some conditions that some of our athletes might have, polycystic ovary syndrome, endometriosis, breast health. So even having the correct clothing, the correct sports bra, the hormonal fluctuations throughout that cycle can cause them to have different injuries. So just throughout the different cycle of the menstruation, the follicular phase means that the way in which they train, so they'll have the increase in estrogen means that they will get gains from their training, but then during the luteal phase means that they can have increased injuries. So again, we need to be careful with how they train. And we need to maybe adjust their training programs according to the menstruation cycle.
And all of this becomes a lot more complicated as well when you throw in endometriosis and polycystic ovaries, which
exactly
makes the cycle irregular, which, you know, the hormone fluctuations that you mentioned.
Exactly.
There's pain throughout the month. So how are you going to work out how to manage that for an athlete with one of those conditions?
Exactly. So that's something that I'll be able to work with my colleagues as well. So as part of the Science Commission, Medical and Science Commission, and we've got a medical doctor on team as well. So we want to do more tracking. There are salivary testing that we can do as well. So that's obviously it's in its infancy at the moment, but that's what we're looking to bring into so that we can work very closely with our athletes to work out exactly who needs that closer monitoring and what we can do exactly to help those athletes who need a little bit more care and who might need a little bit more monitoring, because endometriosis, and sometimes people can go a very long time dealing with those symptoms and not getting a very good answer with exactly what it's causing. They're often overlooked. Sometimes they just think it's, you know, difficult menstruation, but it's very important and it's a very painful condition, and it's something that we need to be able to manage well for them, and that's part of what I want to do for my athletes, to help them. And it's really important that they have someone that they know that they can trust and talk to, and that's what I hope to do for my athletes as well.
Yeah, I mean, as a woman suffering with those conditions, it's really reassuring to know that there are people like you who are willing to study the female body and to further these treatments and understand these conditions more. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely.
What training plans are you working on and how do they help the team?
So at the moment it is very much in its infancy. So at the moment, and I've just been going through the training myself. So the first thing is to write our own female health course. So my first job is to actually train my colleagues. So it's to train first of all the medical team, and then to train the coaches, make sure that they have all of the information that they need so that they feel comfortable with the information, that they are able to then go forward and feel comfortable with the information to be able to adjust the training programs to fit and suit the athletes better. As I mentioned, it is a game of marginal change. Once you get to Olympic level, we're wanting to really get those changes that can really put us on the track. And you know, we are there, you know, to win a medal. Hashtag why not GB. And we really feel that that's what we can do, and that's what we're aiming to do. And I really feel that this team that we have will go all the way.
And how does your soft tissue work also link into all of this? How closely is the soft tissue going to be with this programme?
Yeah, so really closely actually, because again, it's all about, you know, the hormonal changes, the soft tissue changes, it all fits really well together. So by again just having the treatment time and the opportunity to spend the time, again it's a good opportunity to build the relationships with the athletes. We are able to spend time and to, you know, it's often a very good opportunity to get to know the athletes closer during that time. But we work very closely with the athletes with what particular modality they like. Some of them like to have the dry needling, some of them like to have the manual therapy, cupping, and we work very, very closely with what they like, and some of them have a good mix of that all together. And depending upon whether it's on the day of competition or whether it's before, depending upon how much work we tend to do.
So your work with female health, how do you think that empowers your athletes?
Oh, it will really give them the knowledge, and by even just something as simple as cycle tracking, because sometimes an athlete can train and they're doing everything they can, but they can just feel very flat. And they feel quite confused with why that's the case. And once you actually just take it back to a simple level of just, okay, let's look at the cycle, let's look at what's happening, and it will literally come down to what's happening. It will take it back to basics by looking at, okay, where are you in your cycle? Where are you with fueling, and are you eating right? Because sometimes what they might find is that they're feeling a little bit bloated because of the cycle, so they'll take their energy back and they'll cut calories. That's the last thing that we want to do. So what we make sure we do is we look at the cycle, we fuel correctly, and then they'll find actually their cycle becomes more regular, their fueling is correct, and they'll, everything comes back to that, and so they get more energy because they have that knowledge of exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it. It helps them to understand the process, why they need exactly to fuel correctly and when. It helps them so that they're eating correctly because again, they can get quite uncomfortable with their bodies and what it looks like, especially with some of the younger athletes. And it's important that we know that, powerful is beautiful and strong is beautiful, and we want them to be comfortable with their bodies. And it's important that they know that they're fueling correctly and we're making them into strong, athletes. And it really gives them, empowers them to know exactly, how their bodies are working, and we're fueling them correctly, and they're knowing exactly how their body's working, and that they're building a body that they're living in and that's powerful and strong to take them through to, the Olympics that they want to go. Yeah.
It's so inspiring, it really is. What are some of the more surprising things that you've found with your work on this project?
Well, when you look at some of the history, just looking at some of the history of some of the things that women haven't been able to do, and it's still quite recent. So if you go back to 1969, when man was walking on the moon, women were still not able to take part in sporting events. And it's incredible when you think about that history. And so, women were, not allowed to take part in, women were not receiving equal pay, for sporting, and women were still not allowed to take part in. And I, as an athlete myself, I used to take part in triple jump, but it was only, I used to have to do long jump and track, and I really wanted to do triple jump, but it wasn't until much later that I was actually at that event was actually open to me. And it used to, fox me that there were certain events that we still couldn't do. We couldn't run beyond a certain distance, and it was because we were deemed to be too frail and too delicate to be able to do those events. We all know that we're incredibly strong and powerful, and actually when men went off to wartime, women wanted to play football, but actually there was a myth that actually if you played football it would damage your reproductive system. Completely not true. And some of those things, when you start to look at the history of why, absolutely nothing wrong with, we are strong. And so women have broken many barriers. You look at the London Marathon, the records are changing, and women are incredibly strong. And if we can just continue to look at how strong we can be, and we can still continue to look at our physiology, we will continue to break barriers, and we will continue to do great things if we can just look at how our bodies work and how great and strong they can be.
Another huge barrier that's been broken is the amount of coverage of women's sport, like women winning the Euros and a lot of Netball Super League being put on the telly, and women's rugby, the World Cup this year. How do you feel about that?
Exactly. I mean, it's great, and it's, less likely now as well that, that it's been absolutely great, but, we don't even really sort of say women's football anymore. You can still talk about, he'll say Arsenal football, and, we don't know, are they talking women's football or men's football? Because again, we don't really differentiate, because it is out there. Women, people do want to watch women's sport, and the prize money is starting, to become equal. And you'll find the same in LA 28. It's pretty much 50-50 in terms of participation, and that's absolutely great. And we're absolutely, absolutely stoked that women's softball is going to be part of that.